Hi, everybody. I'm Mike Green.
And I'm Abby Maxwell, and we're going to give you our climate and energy policy update for this month. We want to thank you all so much to those of you who attended ASBN's Business Policy and Purpose Conference in October. It was such a great time to see all of you and to hear some great sessions. Our recordings are going to be available soon to ASBN members and everyone who registered for the conference. And so if you missed any of the sessions, you're going to get a chance to watch all of the recordings. I personally would recommend the two that our wonderful Michael Green moderated. That was Purple State Green
Thanks,
Momentum, where
Abby.
we, you're welcome, where we heard from leaders in Pennsylvania and Wisconsin about climate progress, both in the private sector and at the state and local level. That one was a really great conversation with two leaders in the space. And then also businesses at COP30 elevating carbon removal and climate leadership, where we
Mm,
heard from Carbon Business Council about COP30 and how carbon removal will be highlighted. I'm so excited because we'll be on the ground at COP30 as well as Carbon Business Council. And so I'm going to turn it over to Mike to tell us a little bit more about that.
thanks, Abby. And thanks to everybody who was able to make our sessions last week. It was a pleasure to get to speak with some of the audience members as well as our great panelists. And thank you to the folks who made the event possible, Abby, staff at ASBN, as well as the great sponsors. It was really, really great. So yeah, as Abby said, we are going to be sending a small delegation of people to COP as we do just about every year. I think it's really important for American businesses and American business leadership to show up to the conference to represent the momentum, the integrity of the climate actions, as well as all the innovation that's actually happening here in the US. I think we talked about on the panel last week that sometimes if you look at the climate commitments of a state here in the US, it can equal whole countries, in other parts of the world. So it's really important to share what is happening outside of maybe what we might hear in the federal policy dominating the climate policy landscape. And so, yeah, we'll be on the ground. Excited that I'll get to be talking with Sasha again, actually, while we're at COP on a panel. So look forward to being there. If you're going to be at COP, please do reach out to myself or to Abby, and would love to get you guys tied in. To the various events and other things that John Imes from Wisconsin will be representing their work there as well. And so, yeah, would love to connect with people.
Thanks, Mike. We are going to have our climate and energy policy brief on December 4th. So that
Fourth,
will be that
sorry.
will be following Mike's time at the COP. And so it'll be a really great chance for members to come together and we're going to talk about all the news that happened at the COP at a broad level and then also everyone's personal experience in our bubble that went. And we're really looking forward to all of you joining us for that. Thanks so much.
Hello, I'm Liza Lamana. I am the Manager of Agriculture and Water Policy here at ASBN. And I want to start today by sharing some updates on the Clean Water is Good for Business initiative. We had a steering committee meeting this month, and it was great to get to connect, but unfortunately, there hasn't been much movement on this front. I don't know if you've heard, but our government's been shut down. So unfortunately, they have had some more pressing things on their table than the Permitting Act, which has been the main thing that we've been focusing on lately in this initiative. I do want to thank everyone who has signed on to our letter opposing the Permit Act. We now have 90 business signatures. And for the time being, while Congress is dealing with other things, we're going to continue collecting signatures. So if you haven't signed on, there's still time. And if you have already signed on but feel compelled to share this initiative further, we would really appreciate your support if you could share it with a fellow business leader. And now back to the elephant in the room. The federal government remains shut down as of today, Monday, November 3rd. Lawmakers are arguing over whether to include funding to keep health insurance costs lower for millions of Americans who buy coverage through the Affordable Care Act marketplace. The Senate needs 60 votes to pass a temporary funding bill, but lawmakers couldn't reach an agreement. If the shutdown continues into tomorrow, this will be the longest in US history. This isn't just a problem in Washington. It's hurting families, farmers, and businesses across the country. Roughly half of USDA staff are furloughed, and most of the county farm service agency offices are closed as well. This means farmers can't get new loans, disaster aid, enroll in conservation programs, or access technical insurance. These disruptions are severe for farmers who are already facing tight margins, and they have ripple effects throughout the whole economy. But unfortunately, these are things that we expect to happen when a government shuts down. But this shutdown became unlike any before on October 10th, when the USDA warned that it would have insufficient funds to issue November SNAP benefits if the shutdown continues past October 27th, unless emergency funds are released. But the thing is, there are SNAP emergency funds called contingency reserves. The USDA argues that these contingency funds can only be used to supplement, not replace, appropriated funds. This is contradicting past practice and directive, including by this administration in 2019, and even as recently as a few weeks ago in the USDA lapse of funding plan, which the agency has since removed from its website. October 27th, it has passed, and on Friday, October 31st, two federal judges ruled this agency's approach unconstitutional. While some officials say benefits could be restored in days, more than 42 million recipients did not receive their SNAP payments on Saturday, cutting off billions in spending that sustained grocery stores, farmers, and food processors nationwide. Every $1 in SNAP benefit generates roughly $1.50 to $1.80 in economic activity. When benefits stop, small businesses, regenerative farmers, and local food hubs lose customers and revenue almost immediately. If your business, or community is feeling the impact, or you're simply a concerned citizen, please call your members of Congress today to urge them to reinstate SNAP and reopen the government while negotiating healthcare provisions that protect workers and businesses. You can also tell your business's story through our Tell Your Story campaign. Unfortunately, even when the government reopens, our farm economy won't be out of the woods. The Farm Bill expired on September 30th. Without reauthorization, programs, especially those that rely on annual appropriations, will lapse, and payments across the board are at risk. Not everything stops at once. Some programs have dedicated or mandatory funding, but permanent authorization doesn't mean immune to disruption. If Congress doesn't extend or replace the Farm Bill by January 1st, some supports could revert to 1930s permanent law parity rules. Analyst warns that parity could push farm prices, for example, milk, to roughly double recent market prices, which would ripple into much higher retail prices. Meanwhile, the administration has proposed expanding low-tariff Argentinian beef imports. With U.S. cattle herds at multi-decade lows, a sudden import competition could depress rancher prices and discourage the investment needed to rebuild these herds. With the lower amount of available product, this would further tighten supply later and squeeze family and sustainable farmers. Many economists believe that it isn't likely to lower retail prices. What does all of this mean for our regenerative agriculture and justice advocacy? Timing is more uncertain than ever, and Congress is likely going to push a skinny farm bill. At the rate that they're moving these days, it's likely going to be an extension, not a full 5-year authorization. And once a draft is out, they will likely move quickly, so there won't be a lot of time for major changes. While a skinny farm bill likely won't address all of our priorities, there is still a potential for wins. You may remember from last month when I mentioned pesticide preemption, a federal policy topic that determines whether states can set stricter rules on pesticides than the federal baseline. There are members of Congress who are trying to add pesticide riders into the Farm Bill. Riders are short provisions that can be added to larger bills without debate, so they sometimes slip through the cracks. These small provisions would stop local governments from being able to use their local expertise to decide the best way to protect their communities from toxic chemicals. We are asking members of the House of Representatives to sign on to a Dear Colleague letter led by Representatives McGovern, Raskin, and Jay Paul opposing this. Earlier this month, I was able to join EWG on the Hill to meet with Representative Don Davis's office and ask him to join the letter as well. We're asking ASBN members to join us in sending letters to their representatives, asking them to join in this initiative. In addition, we're continuing to track conservation and climate smart agriculture agriculture, crop insurance reform, and equity and beginning farmer supports. If you're interested in learning more about these topics or getting more involved in these initiatives, I hope that you join us at one of our steering committee or policy brief meetings next month. I look forward to seeing you all online. Thanks.
Greetings. Here's the update on our safer chemicals and circular economy work. We had a great panel at the ASBN conference, and it covered a lot of ground, including questions like what are the policy and market pathways for just and safer and regenerative product systems? What are the opportunities for policy in the midst of federal rollbacks and termination of regulations? And how are companies innovating in the current economic and political climate? We were thrilled to have great presentations from Martin Wolf, our senior advisor for safer chemicals and circular economy at ASBN, Tim Greiner, the managing director of Pure Strategies, Jenna Arkin, the chief innovation officer at Ecos, and Barry Chick, founder and technical director of Naturepedic, and Aditya Saroya, chief impact officer and co-founder of Repurpose. All members of ours can avail themselves of this recording and of the other sessions from the conference. On the policy front, we continue to work on state chemicals policies. Unfortunately, the PFAS bill that made it through the legislature was vetoed by Governor Newsom in California. The PFAS bill in New York State did not advance far enough this session. The Massachusetts PFAS bill continues to make its way through committees. Good news is that the Vermont PFAS bill passed. On the federal level, we continue to support safer choice. We are working on the development of two business documents. We are creating a plastics fact sheet because as more states introduce policies to eliminate plastics in packaging and other products, a fact sheet that supports the needs to reduce plastic and their toxic additives and avoid false solutions, and where we can outline the steps businesses have taken to reduce their plastics use would be valuable across the board. We're also working on an update to our PFAS fact sheet, and our previous fact sheet has been helpful, but it needs an updating. So if you're interested in providing input into any of these documents, please contact Martin Wolf at mwolf@asbnetwork.org. Hey, our next ASBN Safer Chemicals and Circular Economy Steering Committee is on November 19th, 3 p.m. Eastern. So contact us for meeting details. Thanks so much. Greetings. So here's the update on the small business and local economy work. As a part of the ASBN Business Policy and Purpose Conference, we offered a session on driving community empowerment, tools for investing in the inclusive economy. So together we explored how innovative forms of capital are emerging as critical drivers of community development and economic inclusion. The panel brought together diverse perspectives on how to strategically deploy alternative capital sources to creating lasting community wealth and empowerment. We explored tools and strategies for moving capital directly into communities that need it the most. Real-world examples of how CDFIs are democratizing access to capital, how investment funds are driving impact, and how local business ecosystem development is creating economic opportunity that stays within the communities. We were joined by leading practitioners, including Alexandra Wright Gladstein, the founder and CEO of Sphere, Michael Schuman, the author and publisher of Main Street Journal, Liz Rogers, CEO of Turn Strategies, Pam Porter, CEO of Stepping Stone Partners, Seda Guest, the managing director and investment manager at Trillium Asset Management. All members and conference participants are welcome to request a video of the session. So we're also thrilled to be presenting a panel at the Small Business Anti-Displacement Network Conference on November 12th, 13th, and 14th, our session on the 13th at the University of Virginia. and we'll focus on working to sustain small business amid attacks on equity, fair financing, climate resilience, and what are the timely approaches to advocacy and organizing. And we'll be joined by Vicki Lee Parker High, the executive director of the North Carolina Business Network, Terius Harris, our own director of Indigenous Partnerships and Inclusive Economy, Erin Banton, the founder of The Color in Green, and Louis Kaditz Peck, executive director of the Responsible Business Lending Coalition. Our next small business and local economy meeting, November 20th, 3 p.m. Eastern. Please contact us and we hope you can join.